you've been putting a lot of work into dieting, training, changing up your habits, changing up your lifestyle, and you're not seeing those results reflected on the scale, what do? I mean, I don't think there's anything more frustrating than putting in work to something and just not reaping anything in return. And so this video is going to be a big overview and a deep dive and an analysis of all the little intricacies of what could be affecting your progress in terms of not seeing it reflected on the scale. So if this is an issue that has been bugging you for quite some time, if this is something that you're experiencing now, then you're in the right place. What's up guys, Eric Bowling here. In today's video, we are going into the topic of dieting, training, changing everything up, no change on the scale. Maybe you're losing inches, right? Maybe things are changing, but the scale stays the same, right? So what the heck? What do? Well, the first thing that I'm going to talk about is kind of this overview of questions, things that you need to ask yourself. And so the way that I'm going to break up this video is we're going to look at some of the questions you need to ask yourself, some of the questions you need to be honest with, because these are things either you're not looking at or you're just missing the basics. A lot of people, they just start eating cleaner, right? Maybe you were eating junk food a lot and now you're making food at home. And you think that those changes alone is what's going to be driving weight loss. So in that sense, you're actually not understanding some of the basic fundamentals of fat loss and how weight loss occurs. So we're going to talk about those things first, and then we're going to move into looking at some of the objective things that you can go and check the list off and to see if you're really making progress. And then last but not least, we're going to move into more of the subjective and look at questions that you can ask yourself that are more on the realm of, okay, are other people noticing results? Do I notice results, etc.? And so this is going to be more of like an overview of all the things that you can do to make sure that you're doing the right thing to see the weight moving in the right direction, but also maybe some of the things that you're missing or you're not understanding to get the scale moving. So let's go ahead and jump into the first one. So let's look at the questions. So the easiest way to break this up is ask yourself these three questions. Number one, am I tracking my food intake, right? So if we were to break this question up into subcategories, think about it like this. Do you know how many calories you're consuming on a daily basis? If the answer is no, then right from the beginning, there's your problem. I mean, you don't really even need to go any further than this one alone. If you don't know how much food you're taking in, then you can't really complain when you weigh yourself and you're not seeing any change. A good analogy for this would be something equivalent to you're in debt financially and you go and seek out a CPA, you're looking at getting an accountant. The first question they ask you is, well, how much money's coming in? And if all of a sudden your response to that question is, I have no idea, well, you get my point. So number one, how much are you eating? What does that mean in terms of calories? Start there. If you don't know how to track your food, you can use an app like MyFitnessPal, which is very, very simple. Now, it's not something you need to use for the rest of your life, but if you have no idea in terms of how many calories you're consuming currently, I suggest at least sticking with MyFitnessPal for the next 4 weeks just to get a good idea of how many calories you're taking in on a daily basis. The next question that I would ask is, are you tracking activity? So if the first one was looking at calories in, the next thing we have to look at is calories out. Do you know how many calories you're burning on a daily basis? Do you know how many steps you're getting in? Do you know how many calories you're burning from your workouts? Are you even working out? How many hours are you sleeping? Because a lot of people don't know this, but you burn calories when you sleep. You'll burn a lot more calories getting 8 hours of sleep than you would getting 5 hours of sleep. So how many calories are you burning on a daily basis? Do you even know how many you burn? Do you know what your basal metabolic rate is? Do you know how many calories you need to be taking in to lose weight? These are some of the simple questions that you have to begin with. So like I said in the beginning, a lot of people just start by cleaning up their food, but they miss the fundamentals. They miss the very beginning steps of how much am I taking in, how much is going out. Once again, think about it like money. How much is coming in, How much are you spending? It's simple. Is it the end all be all story? Is the whole calories in versus calories out? Is that the end all be all? No, of course that's not it. But it's the basics. It's the fundamentals. Before you start looking at the other things like nutrients, timing of meals, hormone optimization, etc., you got to get the basics right. So go through those questions first. The last question that you need to ask yourself, how am I measuring my progress? And let me give you an example. If you step on the scale on Monday and you're not doing anything, and so you wake up at 12 p.m. and you wake up, you're fully dressed, you step on the scale and it gives you, let's say, whatever, for the sake of this, let's say it's 150 pounds. And then you're going to weigh yourself the next day, but this time you decide to weigh yourself at 4 p.m. There's no consistency in that. Your weight is comprised of so many different variables. You have water, sodium, your organs, your tissue, muscle, fat, etc. There are so many different things that comprise your weight. And some of the variables that are going to be changing on a daily basis are things such as water retention, how much glycogen is being stored in your muscles, how much fat you're losing or putting on, undigested food particles, etc. The list goes on and on. So you don't necessarily want to be comparing Monday to Tuesday. So the way that I suggest doing it is just start by getting a log and start tracking your weight without any type of emotion attached to it. And what I mean by that is pretty simple. You step on the scale on Monday, pick a time. Let's say it's first thing when you wake up, or it's every day at 7 a.m. after you've used the restroom, no clothes on. Write that weight down. Don't let it freak you out. Whatever it says, just write it down. Then on Tuesday, you repeat the process. And the only way you're going to look at are you losing weight or not is by comparing the average for week 1 versus the average for week 2. So as you can see on the screen, I have 2 examples here. Now, if you look at these examples, as you can see on both examples that I give here, Monday starts higher on week 2. Now, if you were only looking at tracking your weight Monday once a week, it might look like you didn't actually make any progress when you look at week 2. But because we're tracking weight every single day, you can see that yes, you did end up losing weight when you compare the average from week 1 versus week 2. So you did lose weight. So these are the first things that I would start with. Now, if you've answered yes to all the above, let's say yes, you are tracking food. You know how many calories you're supposed to be consuming to quote unquote be in the deficit. You know how active you are. And yes, you are weighing yourself and you're looking at averages and you're doing everything correctly. And you're still not seeing the scale go down. Well, now we have to go into more of the advanced things. So let's look at some of the other factors that can be contributing to potential weight gain or potentially keeping the scale and staying where it is. The first thing we have to look at is, well, when was the last time you challenged your body? And what I mean by that is pretty simple. If you've consistently been walking 8,000 steps and you have consistently been eating the same exact way for the last couple months, well, there's no new stimulus for your body to continue to lose. So let me explain that a little bit further, because that might sound a little confusing. Let's say, for example, when you first started, your baseline was here. And then after a couple months of really pushing the envelope a little bit, being more active, eating a little bit less food, you've now pushed the envelope, so now your new baseline is at a new level. Well, once again, if you don't continue to challenge that in some shape or whatever, well, that might be your new maintenance zone. So to give you an idea, what was once a calorie deficit now might be calorie maintenance for you. Now, does that mean you have to continually lower your calories? Well, in theory, yes. However, it's not meaning you have to lower it simply from food. You can go into a greater deficit by being more active, by pushing yourself harder in the gym, by changing up your training, making the variables a little bit tougher, changing up the workouts that you do, optimizing sleep, etc. So now this is where we can go into things like optimizing hormones and all the other little things and look past just food. Before, I kind of hinted at getting more sleep burns more calories. Well, if you're kind of finding yourself in a rut with weight loss and you are doing all the original things that we had talked about, you were tracking, you're being active, etc. If sleep is your issue, let's say on average you're getting about 6 hours of sleep per night, simply doing whatever you can to get 7 or 8 hours of sleep will get the scale moving again. Another thing to think about, if you're not staying adequately hydrated, and by adequately hydrated, what I suggest for most individuals is start with your body weight. So take your body weight in pounds, divide it by 2, and then whatever that number is, have that amount in ounces. So let's say, for example, you are 200 pounds. You're going to need to drink 100 ounces of water. Now that's at a bare minimum. Now that's a very simple formula for you to use just to get a good idea of what you should be hitting at a bare minimum. But if you're now being active, where you live in a place that's hot. I live in LA, it's very hot here. So a little bit more water is going to be necessary. If you train hard, if you push yourself and you're losing a lot of fluids from sweating during your sessions, that's fluid you need to replace. So all of a sudden that bare minimum now starts to increase. As a general safe rule, most people who are trained individuals will aim for somewhere around 3 to 4 liters per day. But once again, that depends on how much you weigh and how hard you train or how active you are. Now, why is staying adequately hydrated important for fat loss? Well, here's the thing. Your body is comprised of a lot of water. I don't really want to talk about exactly how much because, you can go to so many different sources and they're going to say so many different things. But all you need to know is a big portion of your weight is water. And the way the body works, without going too deep into the science, you have specific hormones that try to maintain equilibrium when it comes to your water balance. So if you're not getting enough water coming in, your body will try to maintain current levels of water to try and keep water staying the same. Meaning you might not be urinating enough and you might be pulling water out of the muscle tissues to store somewhere else, but the body finds a way to store water and have some type of balance throughout the entire system. The more water you drink, the more water you excrete. So it's kind of weird. A lot of people will think, well, I don't want to drink too much water because then my weight will go up. And it's actually the opposite. The more water you drink, at some point you could potentially become dehydrated. A lot of people don't know this, but some people use drinking lots of water to do water cuts. Some people have the misconception that getting rid of water and not drinking it is the thing that's actually going to make you cut water. And that cannot be further from the truth. So you can't really trick the system. So why this is really important when it comes to making sure that you're losing weight is if you are maintaining a specific variable, or I should say, if your water is at a specific baseline, then you don't have a variable that's constantly changing. So this is kind of the point that I'm trying to bring up. The same way if your food intake was all over the place in terms of calories consumed, it's really hard to track the variable because we need to look at the average. A lot of people skip this step when it comes to water intake and when it comes to sodium intake. If Monday through Thursday, you're dehydrated and you're drinking 1 liter of water a day when you actually need 3 liters of water a day, and your sodium intake is 3 grams per day, Monday through Thursday, and then all of a sudden on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you decide those are the days you're going to be more hydrated, and then for whatever reason, those are the days that you also decide to go off your diet so that your sodium intake is saltier, and so you consume more than 3 grams, well, then you can expect when you look at your weight on those following days that you're going to get some enormous spike in weight, whatever it might be. I know a lot of people have experienced this before where maybe let's say, for example, going back to that initial example, if you weigh 150 on Monday and you do some crazy thing with water and sodium by mistake, maybe you don't even know you're doing it, and then all of a sudden you're down to 146 in one day, you can't look at that as, yay, I lost 4 pounds, because come Wednesday, your weight might spike back up to 150 or even 151. This is kind of how weight works. And this is why the scale alone is not the best tool to be using as the only measurement tool that you use to track your progress. So because we know that there are so many different variables that can affect your weight, we need to look at other things outside of just the scale. So now let's go into the next topic that I was talking about when it comes to looking at more objective ways to measure your progress. So the first thing that I would kind of look at would be, are you taking waist measurements? Are you taking hip measurements? Have you looked at these things? Because if on week 1, your waist was 40 inches, and now on week 8, it's 32 inches, who cares what the scale says? You are losing fat. If the scale is the same and the waistline is the same, well, you got an issue there. So now you have to go back and look at all the other things that we had talked about in the beginning of this video to make sure that you are tracking things correctly. Now, this is where we can look even further into the objective things. Don't just take one measurement, because what if your body wants to lose fat elsewhere? Every single person stores fat differently. I'll just use myself as an example. When I'm dieting, my arms stay relatively lean no matter how much weight I put on. At one point when I was training for powerlifting, I got all the way up to 220. Now normally my weight is right at around 170, 175. The highest I ever got was 220, and trust me, I did not look good. But guess what? My arms stayed looking exactly the same. They kind of always hold like a minimal amount of fat on them, no matter how much fat I put on. For me personally, everything goes to my midsection and my love handles. And that's just genetically how my body decides to store fat. If you've had enough time to pass for your body to put on fat in specific spots, and you're only hyper-focused on looking at your stomach, for all you know, you could be making progress. The fat could be being taken off of your back, your arms, your legs, your ankles, who knows, right? Maybe even your face. But if you're so hyper-focused on just looking at your tummy, well, then it may look like you're not actually making any progress. So instead of just measuring your waist, add other measurements as well. Measure your arms, measure your thigh, measure your calf, measure your hips, measure your neck, etc. The other thing that I suggest is take progress photos. Nothing beats comparing one photo to another. If you can't see changes in the photos, then once again, it doesn't matter what the scale shows. And I'll give you an example. Let's say, for example, you've been dieting and training for 12 weeks. And on the scale is changing. Let's say so far you've lost 20 pounds. However, when you look at the photos side to side, you don't see any difference at all. You see, in that scenario, even though the scale did reflect that you were losing a bunch of weight, it may not be fat that you're losing. If you went on a radical diet and you started just cutting water, it's very easy for your body to drop 20 pounds of water. Doesn't mean that that is going to be reflected in how you look. So when people are really looking for weight loss, they're looking for weight loss because they believe that at a specific point, if they weigh, less, they're going to look better. So at the end of the day, what we're really trying to say, what we're really trying to get out of weighing ourselves is we want to look a specific way. We want to look leaner. We don't want to look fat, whatever it may be. So use progress photos in addition to taking measurements. The next thing you can do is add a body fat measurement. Things such as bioelectrical impedance scales are readily available. They're not the most accurate, but it's the safest and easiest thing that you can use at home just to get some type of baseline and idea as to where you are and where are you going. And I'll give you an idea. Even if the weight scales that have the body fat attached to them are not the most accurate, at least you'll start to see trends. So even if it's off by 10%, If it's going down every single week, you're making progress, regardless how accurate it is or not. So those are some of the objective things that you can do in addition to weighing yourself that will give you a better insight into, am I actually making progress or not? Now, the next thing we have to look at are more of the subjective things, things that you can't really pinpoint, but it's more of that feeling based. So the first question I would ask is, do your clothes fit better? Do you look better? Do you see change? Because no matter how much progress you're seeing on the scale, or no matter how much progress potentially you could be seeing with the weight loss or with the inches going down, if you don't feel like you're making any progress, then that's going to affect how long you stick to that specific plan. Another thing is, have other people notice your progress? Do other people compliment you? Are other people saying, what are you doing? You look like you're losing weight, you're looking better, etc. If other people are noticing your progress, that is a hint that something might be changing. So these are some of the subjective things that you can kind of go through to see, okay, maybe there is change, maybe it's just not being reflected on the scale. So like, hopefully this video helped you. Hopefully there was some little piece in it that you were able to utilize or that you were able to take home with you and it helped you. And if it did, go ahead and smash that like button. And once again, guys, if you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. And also make sure to turn on notifications so that you get notified for when these videos drop each and every single week. As always, guys, stay strong and I'll see you next time.